Are you ready for this? Get ready. Here it comes. I was not expecting this today, but here we are. Now, how do I... Oh, I've got to figure out Zoom. That one. And then... this one. Okay. So, I just saw this online. So we have via whitehouse.gov. Very interesting little draw up on the true origins of COVID-19. The origin. All right, let's go through this because this is fascinating. The origin. The proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 publication, which was used repeatedly by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory, was prompted by Dr. Fauci to push the preferred narrative that COVID-19 originated naturally. 1. The virus possesses a biological characteristic that is not found in nature. 2. Data shows that all COVID-19 cases stem from a single introduction into humans. This runs contrary to previous pandemics where there were multiple spillover events. 3. Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a history of conducting gain-of-function research, gene-altering an organism's supercharging, and adequate biosafety levels. Now, pause for a minute. We need to remember that gain of function is a legal term to mean weaponization of viruses. It means to take a virus, gain of function means to take a virus or a pathological bacteria or something like this, a fungus, there's many different ways that it can happen, and to give it something that it doesn't have in the hopes that it will then give more data back. So we need to, this is the logic, we need to create weapons that people would use against us, so that way we can protect ourselves from them. That's the logic here. So SARS-CoV-2 was made using AI artificial technology of sequencing, and this was talked about extensively at the release of the pandemic awareness campaigns in Australia, where I'm based, where they talked extensively in the media in the original 2 weeks to flatten the curve. They talked extensively shortly after that about how the development of the virus, of the antivirus, was unique because we couldn't actually get an isolated sample of SARS-CoV-2. So they had to predict what it was before they could get a hold of it. And to do this, they uploaded a whole bunch of genome sequencing projects from international DNA sequencing databases globally, not just humans, like life, animals, bacteria, organisms, all these. And they got the computer to switch out a bunch of combinations until it could figure out a combination sequence that answered the parameters of the questions that they gave the computer. And it spat out the sequence that became the first vaccines. So a computer came up with the idea of the vaccine. The vaccine was not developed in response to the actual virus. I'm not saying the current vaccines, they might have been directly developed, but to begin with, this is what I recall happening in Australia, being broadcasted on the open networks. You can go back and do the time machine and look at the media and talk about it at the same time. But this is also the reason why later down the path, they had an interesting circumstance again in Australia where they had to admit that developing some of the vaccines in Australia was causing people HIV to be detected to have HIV as a result of their testing after they had been vaccinated, of their testing after they had been vaccinated. So what the computer had done, unknowingly to the people who had started using this, was that it had got the clips of the end of a HIV genome and had used the open and closed parameters, if you know your coding, like a computer code or HTML, open and close, you know what I'm talking about, and to put the sequence of code inside of this constructed case, that constructed case had the biological markers of HIV, and as such, people started to develop symptoms and be tested positively for HIV. There's questions about whether or not they actually did develop HIV, and that's all part of the conspiracy theories. And they're even saying now that there was nobody who was contracting HIV, and that was conspiracy theory, despite the fact that the Queensland State Government and the Queensland State University all had to appear on news and apologise to everyone and say, yeah, we're actually not going to do that anymore. It's a bit of an unexpected accident. Sorry about that. But everybody's okay. Nobody's got HIV. So despite the fact that it's controversial, it's still absolutely abundantly out there and is clear. 4. Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers were sick with COVID-like symptoms in the fall of 2019, months before COVID-19 was discovered at the wet market. 5. By nearly all measures of science, if there was evidence of a natural origin, it would have already surfaced. But it hasn't. What else? Oh, it's just a little map here. Checking that out. House Oversight Report. You can download for your reference. Proximal origin publication, which was used repeatedly by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory, was prompted by Dr. Fauci to push the preferred narrative that COVID-19 originated in nature and was not man-made, and that we're not man-making viruses with weapons added to them. That's not what we're doing. We're gain-of-function researching, and this is highly intellectual activity, and it's likely that somebody like you wouldn't understand such concepts. Gain-of-function is not creating weaponized viruses. So we're told. Gain-of-function research. A lab-related incident involving gain-of-function research is the most likely origin of COVID-19. It does say likely here, I know. Current government mechanisms for overseeing the dangerous gain-of-function research are incomplete, severely convoluted, and lack global applicability. Okay, all of these things hint why it's likely. They're not saying likely because it's a stretch. They're saying likely because there's no fucking evidence, because it's all been deleted and pirated and destroyed over the years that people have been able to hide this crap because everybody decided to go along with it. EcoHealth Alliance Inc. Under the leadership of Dr. Peter Daszak, if you know him and you've been watching what's been going on behind the news media outlets during this whole period, you know exactly who that is. Used US taxpayer dollars to facilitate dangerous gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, after the Select Subcommittee released evidence of EcoHealth violating the terms of its National Institute of Health grant. The US Department of Health and Human Services commenced official debarment proceedings and suspended all funding to EcoHealth. They should also then logically have to stand reparation and repay all of the money that they have illegally eclipsed from the public space of taxpayers' money to use against the taxpayers themselves to extract more money out of them. The taxpayers should be holding EcoHealth and the people behind EcoHealth up in public gallows for rotten fruit display humiliation rituals. New evidence also shows that the Department of Justice has opened an investigation into EcoHealth's pandemic-era activities. Oh, they have, and they have been, and it's very interesting to pay attention to. NIH's procedures for funding and overseeing potentially dangerous research are deficient, unreliable, and pose a serious threat to both public health and national security. Further, NIH fostered an environment that promoted evading federal record-keeping laws, as seen through the actions of Dr. David Morans and the FOIA lady Marge Moore. If you don't know about that, that is an extensive abuse of government powers and a clear breach of public trust. The fiduciary responsibilities of these individuals should be taken at maximum effect and maximum punishment, because these are the people who have the highest fucking trust. They require, excuse me for my Australian, they have the highest public offices of trust in terms of health and responsibility, not to mention the amount of assets and money that they're moving around. These are more responsible than your average police officer. We need stringent accountability practices for people who conduct and go along these like this. a full and unconditional pardon for any offences against the United States which may have been committed or taken part in from January 1st, 2014. That's a very long time ago. Very long. Why is it so? Oh, yeah, maybe there's more about that. I'm sure there's more about that that'll come out in the coming months. HHS obstruction. The Biden's administration's HHS engaged in a multi-year campaign of delay, confusion, and non-responsiveness in an attempt to obstruct the select subcommittee's investigation and hide evidence that would incriminate or embarrass senior public health officials. It appears that HHS even intentionally under-resourced its component that responds to legislative oversight requests. They deliberately cut funding from it, so they couldn't. EcoHealth obstruction. EcoHealth President Dr. Peter Daszak obstructed the select subcommittee's investigation by providing publicly available information, instructing his staff to reduce the scope and pace of productions, and doctoring documents before releasing them to the public. Further, Dr. Daszak provided false statements to Congress, which means he should be immediately thrown into the jammer. All right? Like, you don't lie to the accountability factors. Dr. Fauci's senior advisor, Dr. David Morans, deliberately obstructed the select subcommittee's investigation, likely lied to Congress on multiple occasions, unlawfully deleted federal COVID-19 records, which is, again, top of the line for me. I'm sorry, but if you're taking my tax money and you're deleting the evidence of what you're doing, I'm going to come for you. That's the job I expect you to do. That's the responsibility that I put trust in you to have in your fiduciary capacity. Dr. Fauci's senior advisor, David Morris, deliberately obstructed and unlawfully deleted federal COVID-19 records, shared non-public information about NIH grant processes with EcoHealth President Dr. Peter. New York obstruction. New York's executive chamber, led presently by Governor Kathy Hochul, redacted documents, offered numerous illegitimate privilege claims, and withheld thousands of documents without an apparent legal basis to obstruct the select subcommittee's investigation into former government Cuomo's pandemic-era failures. Now, this is one that we got to break down for a minute. This sounds like gossip and like tabloid crap going on in the legal world, like, oh, the governors are fighting and there's some infighting and this person is doing this and this. Oh, wow, oh, fascinating. No, actually, this is a lot more toxic than it comes off. For instance, New York's executive chamber, an executive chamber is usually, can't say factually because I haven't fact-checked this, but usually is an unlawfully established, illegitimate, but until taken down due to disagreement, de facto organization that gives them the ability to then interact with people in a legal fashion as long as people continue to agree to that. And as such, people are, because they're not taking them down. So as long as you agree to something, even if it's not real, it can be legal. And that's why legal does not equal lawful. Lawful does not equal, they're two completely different, they are not synonyms. They do not synonymously sit together. If you believe that legal and lawful are, well, they're basically the same, you're an individual who would be proponently supportive of Nazi Germany. You're an individual who would be proponently supportive of the destruction of the freedom of society and the descent into, take your pick. The language here used in certain aspects of this, and this is the reason why I wanted to talk about this, has in it legal jargon. And the legal jargon is important to point out because it has secrets in it that most people don't get. For instance, where's the word here? Redacted documents offered numerous illegitimate privilege claims. Privilege. Now, privilege in this context is not talking about, oh, well, you're a woman, so I'm going to let you go into the building first because I'm a man. No, we're not talking about anything trivial. We're talking about legal terms. You know what privilege in legalities is? It is usually referring to, if anything at all, segregation and separation within the economy. It's called a caste system at this point. Privilege. Now, this is important because this is the game that is being played. PRI. I'm sorry for the delay here. Black's Law Dictionary, first edition. Okay. Privilege. Privilege, a particular and peculiar benefit or advantage enjoyed by a person, company, or class beyond the common advantages of other citizens. Let me repeat, a particular or peculiar benefit or advantage enjoyed by a person, company, or class beyond the common advantages of other citizens. An exceptional or extraordinary power of exemption. Why, in a world of equal law, are there people with exceptions? You're allowed to kill me, but I'm not allowed to kill you. You're allowed to destroy the economy of the world, and I'm not allowed to hold you accountable for that. It doesn't work like that. That's called caste systeming. That's called segregation. That's a belief system within the legal theory and philosophical approach to human treatment that is renowned amongst eugenicist circles who want to control and manipulate the course of people. Fascinating subjects. Continuing. There's a wonderful video here by Massey and Lag Leap Theory Cover-Up where he provides some legitimate evidence within the Standing House. World Health Organization. I haven't actually seen it. It's a video I saw a while back when it came out, I'm sure, on YouTube. World Health Organization response to the COVID-19 pandemic was an abject failure because it caved to pressure from the Chinese Communist Party and placed China's political interest ahead of its international duties. Further, the WHO's newest effort to solve the problems exacerbated the COVID-19 pandemic via a pandemic treaty may harm the United States and is harming the rest of the world currently. The pandemic treaty is one of the biggest threats to every living human being breathing out there right now, except for those who benefit from it. And it's a very small select class, separate group of privileged individuals who self-proclaim their privilege. Social distancing, the 6 feet apart social distancing recommendation, which shut down schools and small businesses across the country, was arbitrary and not based on science, not based on science, not based on science, not based on science. During closed-door testimony, Dr. Fauci testified that the guidance, just sort of appeared. It was an idea that we were floating around, and, it seemed like a good idea to stick. It's not based in science! Mask mandates. There were no conclusive evidence that masks effectively protected Americans from COVID-19. Public health officials flip-flopped on the efficiency of masks without providing American scientific data, causing a massive uptick in public distrust. This is a subject that we need to discuss. Public health officials flip-flop on the efficacy of masks providing American scientific data without providing American scientific data. That right there is psychological warfare against the population of the people. If you have a group of people that you are governing and looking after, and you are deliberately agitating them into a state of fear, paranoia, and panic, which is exactly what news state media organizations do, big loud noises and crack news now and breaking news and all this sort of bullshit here to get your senses pumping, your organs generating the hormones that are needed to be able to perpetuate the stories and the psychological programming using ultra-developed MK Ultra techniques that are used to manipulate your perception without you even realizing it. This right here is a perfect example of that. Easily pointed out in one of my most commonly shared memes that I've accidentally shared on my Facebook, which was talking about the fact that the KGB have done extensive experiments to provide data on how providing stress to a target group of people and then a confusing message of flip-flopping will result in the individuals who are subject to this defaulting out of this decision-making process and deferring decision-making to authority. That is a proven concept in neurological and advanced intelligence agency research circles. They use this against the population. They used this against you and your family. They used psychological manipulation techniques to distort your perception to take advantage of you. The people you pay your tax to look after you are deliberately deceiving you for their own benefit, even if it costs you and your family member your lives. And this is all enabled through the dualistic world of legal and lawful. Okay? Lockdowns. Prolonged lockdowns caused immeasurable harm to not only the American economy, but also to the mental and physical health of Americans, with a particularly negative effect on younger citizens. Rather than prioritizing the protection of most vulnerable populations, federal and state government policies forced millions of Americans to forego crucial elements of a healthy and financially sound life. So, through lockdowns, the government forced millions of people into ill health and despondency, let alone poverty. Let me repeat that. The government, the United States government, during the process of forced lockdowns, as long as every other government that engaged in forced lockdowns, caused deliberate, known ill health to be forced upon the population. Okay? They knew what this would do, and then the worst part of it is the bullcrap media that goes on about how job numbers are up, business numbers are up, GDP is up, and yet you look at the numbers and you look at the data and the small business versus the government-funded programs, you get to see what's happening here. If you have a fucking moment to pay attention. Anyway. Again, sorry for my Australian. New York pandemic failures. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's March 25th order, which forced nursing homes to accept COVID-19 positive patients, was medical malpractice. Evidence shows that Mr. Cuomo and his administration would cover up the tragic aftermath of the policy decisions in an apparent effort to shield themselves from accountability. Evidence suggests Mr. Cuomo knowingly and willfully, made false statements to the Select Subcommittee on numerous occasions about material aspects of New York COVID-19 nursing home disaster and the ensuing cover-up. The Select Subcommittee referred Mr. Cuomo to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. COVID-19 misinformation. Public health officials often misled. Public health officials often, meaning if you have all of it and you draw a line in the middle, where the middle way is, then the term often applies to the larger portion of it, okay? Not the smaller portion, the larger portion of it. I mean, in my context, actually, now I think about it, could be used in a lesser context. It could be used for, the, like, several times or a dozen times. It often happens, But in this context, I'm picking it up as majority of the time. Anyway, as again, that's what they do in the news channels. They deliberately use techniques to trigger the psychoneurological PNEI, psychoneuroimmunological components of your body, which is your entire stress release hormone system. So news channels are perfected fight or flight response machines. They cultivate practices and techniques to control your fight or flight system. That controls your entire health system as to whether or not you can cure yourself from cancer, as to whether or not you can get over the issues that you've got and heal yourself, or whether they become to deteriorating issues like a degrading knee or a degrading spine. Back to the misinformation, because this is what it's all about. Misinformation. So you don't know, so you have to listen to them. Like I was saying before. Public health officials often misled the American people through conflicting messaging, knee-jerk reactions, and a lack of transparency. Most egregiously, the federal government demonized alternative treatments and disfavored narratives such as lab leak theory in a shameful effort to coerce and control the American people's health decisions. This is epitomized by the fact that the sun was demonized. The sun, the literal life-giving force of all things on the planet. Were you told not to go outside in the sun, that the sun through your windows would be enough, except they forgot to tell you that standardized glass has a particular feature built into it that eclipses small nano bands of light frequencies that are particularly responsive to the photoreceptors within your DNA system. Those photoreceptors are very fascinating and fall within the realm of 320 nanometers. Within the UV bands, the ultraviolet bands. So when they say that these windows are great for you because they protect your family from being sunburned inside, what they're actually saying is we've cut out some of the light that you need, so that way you don't get sunburned. But they won't tell you what your sunburn is, will they? In a shameful effort to coerce and control the American people's health decisions. When those efforts failed, the Biden administration resorted to outright censorship, coercing and colluding with the world's largest social media companies to censor all COVID-related 19 dissent. And here we have the Select Subcommittee on the Pandemic. Content on this page is sourced from the House Oversight Committee website, a Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, and the Committee on Oversight and Accountability in the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, legal reasons or disclaimers. I am not a practicing doctor. I'm not prescribing health, and you should follow the whatever you should follow because you're listening to your authority and you subscribe to that. I'm not providing legal advice. You should subscribe to the authorities that provide you your belief systems and everything else like that, because otherwise I will get attacked by them. So don't think that I'm telling you that you should believe me. What I'm telling you is you should open your eyes and do your own research while following all of the rules as best as you can, because we're good little boys and girls, and whatever you choose to be out there. So have fun. Oh, by the way, the website, again, www.whitehouse.gov/lab-leak-true-origins-of-COVID-19 / or you can just type in White House COVID release into any search engine. This is everything that you and I need to stop what's going on around the world right now. It doesn't matter where you are, what country you are, what council you are, what group of people you're in. This is absolutely everything that everybody needs. And if you don't know what to do with it, you need to speak more to people like me and other people like me who can actually put these tools and functions into play and make these things happen. It's not something we need to wait for other people to do. It's something that we need to do because we are the government. They listen to us. We govern ourselves. They administer our governance. They're administrators. They're not decision makers. They're not kings. They're not... For example, in America, the president can make decisions because the people have given him the ability to do so. He can't make certain decisions against the people who make those decisions to give him that ability because there's certain agreements that are in place to prevent that. Do you see how that works? That's what pisses me off about segregation, is because it's usually referred to as the zero rule or the null rule. And that is, if I have 6 people and I have no right to lock that person away, or I have no right to shoot this person, then how does these 3 people coming together into a group, put on special clothes, make special paperwork, all of a sudden have the abilities that none of us had when we were by ourselves? These constructed powers and these imaginary concepts that are used in government that are considered to be normal, perfectly okay, are only considered normal and perfectly okay by people who are actually under extreme psychological warfare effects right now, because if you have any capacity to use your prefrontal cortex in its natural role, you are critically thinking and screaming internally at the logic that I just pointed out. And if you're not, then you're not. And what does that say? That you're not aware of how it actually is deception. And in which case you should go back and read this entire website, watch the videos, download the papers, read it all. Again and again until you do get it. Now, this isn't 100% truth either, because there's still the argument as to whether or not the Petri dish techniques used within virology actually promulgate and perpetuate the messages that are being repeated. That's an extremely big subject that does need everybody's attention around the world, because it's the question as to whether or not everything we know about viruses is correct or everything we know about viruses is incorrect. You know, think about that. It's a legitimate question. I'm not saying that people don't get sick or that there are no effects. What I'm saying is that the idea of what we're told about it is incorrect. Okay? So it's all over the place. You're told that the power station makes power and it sends it to your house. No, nothing moves through the power line. It's through a connection outlet using complicated electrical terms and techniques that the power ejects at that point of contact out of the circuit. It doesn't flow through the pipe of wire to your house. That's how they teach you. Banking teaches you that banking can make loans because of the money that you deposit into the bank. That's correct. Absolutely correct in one way of perception, but it leaves 5,000 other interpretations open for you to walk away with and assume whatever you want. Like, well, when I've got money in the account, they take some of that money and they give it to other people. That's how they learn money, right? No, what they're saying is when you put money in the account, you give them the ability to create an imaginary money, an imaginary amount of money, and then they can use that imaginary amount of money to loan out to other people. You depositing money into the bank gives them the ability to make money, and then that gives them the ability to loan money. So by them eclipsing a chunk of information out of the middle of that, they can leave you walking away legally with an assumption that is actually false advertising, but isn't false advertising, because it's not what they said. That's not what they said. They never said that. They would never say that. They would never ever say that. That's what you thought. That's not what they said. That's not what they said. No. That's what you thought. Legal games, word games, double speak, political speak, all these things. These are the games that are being played. Deception, manipulation, control, and distortion. Okay? Stay friendly out there, family. And get onto it in your local area. Take these documents, take this information to your council chambers, to your local members, to your MPs, to fucking Jackie Lambie and the rest of them. Again, excuse my Australia. It is a cultural term, fuck, in Australia, and it is appreciated as an expression of creativity and emotional release. It is not an insult. I'm not using it directly at or targeting anybody with it, and so it is not an attack on our front or and anybody, unless you choose to make it so by your own choice. It is cultural reference for me, and as such, I'm fully capable in being able to express myself. I appreciate your time, and I do hope that you can take this and use it in your world in some way. Because if we don't, the deception is going to keep going.